me, that is self-possession. Because I live in a society, I cannot do that.
Victoria, are you questioning the fundamental premise of self-possession?
Yes. I think that you don't really have self-possession if you choose to live in a society, because you cannot just discount the people around you.
We were talking last time about libertarianism. I want to go back to the arguments for and against the redistribution of income. But before we do that, just one word about the minimal state. Milton Friedman, a libertarian economist, he points out that many of the functions that we take for granted as properly belonging to government don't. They are paternalist. One example he gives is Social Security. He says it's a good idea for people to save for their retirement during their earning years, but it's wrong. It's a violation of people's liberty for the government to force everyone, whether they want to or not, to put aside some earnings today for the sake of their retirement. If people want to take the chance, or if people want to live big today and live a poor retirement, that should be their choice. They should be free to make those judgments and take those risks. So even Social Security would still be at odds with the minimal state that Milton Friedman argued for. It's sometimes thought that collective goods like police protection and fire protection will inevitably create the problem of free riders unless they're publicly provided. But there are ways to prevent free riders. There are ways to restrict even seemingly collective goods like fire protection. I read an article a while back about a private fire company, the Salem Fire Corporation in Arkansas. You can sign up with the Salem Fire Corporation, pay a yearly subscription fee, and if your house catches on fire, they will come and put out the fire. But they won't put out everybody's fire. They will only put it out if it's a fire in the home of a subscriber, or if it starts to spread and to threaten the home of a subscriber. The newspaper article told the story of a homeowner who had subscribed to this company in the past, but failed to renew his subscription. His house caught on fire. The Salem Fire Corporation showed up with its trucks and watched the house burn, just making sure that it didn't spread. The fire chief was asked, well, he wasn't exactly the fire chief, I guess he was the CEO. He was asked, how can you stand by with fire equipment and allow a person's home to burn? He replied, once we verified there was no danger to a member's property, we had no choice but to back off according to our rules. If we responded to all fires, he said, there would be no incentive to subscribe. The homeowner, in this case, tried to renew his subscription at the scene of the fire, but the head of the company refused. You can't wreck your car, he said, and then buy insurance for it later. So even public goods that we take for granted as being within the proper province of government can, many of them, in principle, be isolated, made exclusive to those who pay. That's all to do with the question of collective goods and the libertarians' injunction against paternalism. But let's go back now to the arguments about redistribution. Now, underlying the libertarians' case for the minimal state is a worry about coercion. But what's wrong with coercion? The libertarian offers this answer. To coerce someone, to use some person for the sake of the general welfare, is wrong because it calls into question the fundamental fact that we own ourselves. the fundamental moral fact of self-possession or self-ownership. The libertarians' argument against redistribution begins with this fundamental idea that we own ourselves. Nozick says that if the society as a whole can go to Bill Gates or go to Michael Jordan and tax away a portion of their wealth, what the society is really asserting is a collective property right in Bill Gates or in Michael Jordan. But that violates the fundamental principle that we belong to ourselves. Now, we've already heard a number of objections to the libertarian argument. What I would like to do today is to give the libertarians among us a chance to answer the objections that have been raised. And some have already identified themselves and have agreed to come and make the case for libertarianism to reply to the objections that have been raised. So raise your hand if you are among the libertarians who's prepared to stand up for the theory and respond to the objections. You are Alex Harris, who's been a star on the weblog. All right, Alex, come here. Stand up. Come. We'll create a libertarian corner over here. And who else? Other libertarians who will join. What's your name? John? John Sheffield. John. Who else wants to join? Other brave libertarians who are prepared to take on. Yes. What's your name? Julia Roto. Julia, come join us over there. Now, while Team Libertarian Julia, John, Alex, while Team Libertarian is gathering over there, let me just summarize the main objections that I've heard in class and on the website. Objection number one. And here, I'll come down to, I want to talk to Team Libertarian over here. So, objection number one is that the poor need the money more. That's an obvious objection. A lot more than do Bill Gates and Michael Jordan. Objection number two. It's not really slavery to tax, because at least in a democratic society, it's not a slaveholder. It's Congress. It's a democratic. You're smiling, Alex, already. You're confident you can reply to all of these? So, taxation by consent of the governed is not coerced. Third, some people have said, don't the successful, like Gates, owe a debt to society for their success that they repay by paying taxes? Who wants to respond to the first one? The poor need the money more. All right. And you're?
John.
John. All right, John. What's the answer? Here, I'll hold it.
All right. The poor need the money more. That's quite obvious. I could use the money. You know, I certainly wouldn't mind if Bill Gates gave me $1 million. I mean, I'd take 1,000. But at some point, you have to understand that the benefits of redistribution of wealth don't justify the initial violation of the property right. If you look at the argument, the poor need the money more, at no point in that argument do you contradict the fact that we've extrapolated from agreed upon principles that people own themselves. We've extrapolated that people have property rights. And so whether or not it would be a good thing or a nice thing, or even a necessary thing for the survival of some people, we don't see that that justifies the violation of the right that we've logically extrapolated.
Good. Okay.
And so that also, I mean, there still exists this institution of, like, individual philanthropy. Milton Friedman makes this argument.
All right, so Bill Gates
Chicago.
can give to charity if he wants to.
Right.
But it would still be wrong to coerce him.
Exactly.
To meet the needs of the poor.
Exactly.
Are the two of you happy with that reply? Anything to add? All right. Go ahead, Julie?
I think, Julia, yes.
Julia.
I think I could also add, I guess I could add that there's a difference between needing something and deserving something. I mean, in an ideal society, everyone's needs will be met, but here we're arguing what do we deserve as a society. And, yeah.
And the poor don't deserve the benefits that would flow from taxing Michael Jordan to help them.
Based on what we've come up with here, I don't think you deserve something like that.
All right, let me push you a little bit on that, Julia. The victims of Hurricane Katrina are in desperate need of help. Would you say that they don't deserve help that would come from the federal government through taxation?
Okay, that's a difficult question. I think this is a case where they need help, not deserve it. But I think, again, if you hit a certain level of requirements to reach sustenance, you're going to need help. Like if you don't have food or a place to live, that's a case of need.
So need is one thing, and desert is another.
Exactly.
All right. Who would like to reply? Yes.
Going back to the first point that he made about the property rights of the individual, the property rights are established and enforced by the government, which is a democratic government, and we have representatives who enforce those rights. If you live in a society that operates under those rules, then it should be up to the government to decide how those resources that come about through taxation are distributed, because it is through the consent of the government. And if you disagree with it, you don't have to live in that society where that operates.
All right, good. So, and tell me your name.
Raul?
Raul is pointing out, actually Raul is invoking point number 2. If the taxation is by the consent of the governed, it's not coerced, it's legitimate. Bill Gates and Michael Jordan are citizens of the United States. They get to vote for Congress. They get to vote their policy convictions, just like everybody else. Who would like to take that one on? John?
Basically, what the libertarians are objecting to in this case is the middle 80% deciding what the top 10% are doing for the bottom 10%.
Well, wait, John.
Not as excited.
Majority. Don't you believe in democracy?
Well, right, but at some point...
Don't you believe in, I mean, you say 80%, 10% majority. Majority rule is what? The majority.
Exactly, but...
In a democracy. Aren't you for democracy?
Yes, I'm for democracy, but... hang on. Democracy and mob rule aren't the same thing. Like
mob rule?
Mob rule. Exactly.
But in an open society, you have a recourse to address that through your representatives. And if the majority of the consent of those who are governed doesn't agree with you, then you know you're choosing to live in a society. And you have to operate under what the majority of society concludes.
All right, Alex, on democracy. Democracy, what about that?
The fact that I have won, 500,000th of a vote for one representative in Congress is not the same thing as my having the ability to decide for myself how to use my property rights. I'm a drop in the bucket. And,
You might lose the vote.
Exactly.
And they might take...
And I will. I mean, I don't have the decision right now of whether or not to pay taxes. If I don't, I get locked in jail. Or they tell me to get out of the